Okay. Hello and good afternoon. Warm welcome to every delegate and the expert speakers who have joined us for this interesting session on perils of dark web, how to protect from digital risks. I mean, the topic is a little longer, but as per my conversation with the two speakers that we will have today, we are going to make it very interesting, very a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, a lot of interactions, and please feel free to speak to our speakers through me. You cannot have a two-way communication, but I will ensure that as a moderator, I will put forth your viewpoint, your questions, and they will answer. So I'll shortly be making way for the experts to take you through the interesting, exciting, and also some of the very dangerous details of dark and deep web. I would also not like to eat up much of your valuable time, but would like to give you 3-4 slides that I have put together, which will give you some food for thought and also some facts that might just stump all of us. So. Where are the slides? Let me just put them once again. Sorry. Yeah. So how deep and dark is the title of my slide, but so if you compare to all the websites available on the entire surface web, the deep web, which is Deepweb alone is actually 40 times larger, and it is more than 90% of the internet that you can't search through a search engine. And the dark web that we are going to talk about is only a small fraction. This figure may be a little bit here and there, 0.01% of the deep web. So you can imagine what all is happening in this contentious and in this conspicuous world. What are the top industries in deep web? So right from information technology to cybersecurity to e-commerce to banking, government, media entertainment, finance, cryptocurrency, education, healthcare, and then there are 43% others. I mean, there are so many others, but IT and cybersecurity are the top. IT, cybersecurity, e-commerce, and banking are the top 4. And which are the top 10 countries? So right from United States to United Kingdom, India stands 3. I'll give you some more startling facts about India. 48% of the internet accounts for dark web. Credit card numbers cost as little as $9 on the dark web markets, and there's a laundry list of things that are available there. For example, a Netherlands passport is available on dark web for $4,000. That's probably one of the costliest items. There are 22 billion new records that are believed to be added to the dark web by cyber criminals in 2020. Imagine 133,000 C-level Fortune 1000 executives had their credentials available and accessible on dark web. So, who's secured? God knows who's secured. Even fundamentalists like ISIS, they made use of dark web to protect members, spread propaganda, and safeguard content. They had set up various sites on the dark web to help them spread news and propaganda while also safeguarding their content from hacktivists. Here you go. India is the country with the most users on the dark web. India has the highest percentage of the world population using the dark web, which makes up to 26 to 27% of all the countries. Okay, so I will not take much of your time. This is the history and timeline of how it all began. right from the starting of ARPANET in 1960s. So here is the panel of the expert speakers that we have today. I have the privilege of having with us Mr. Vijay Sethi, who's the former CIO, CHRO, and head of CSR, Hero Motor Corp. And he's there in the capacity of an advisor and an expert. A very, 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 very renowned technology strategist, technology leader, business leader, a very successful HR professional with more than 30 years of experience predominantly in manufacturing industry and consulting as well. He has led a lot of successful digital transformation projects for his last organization that he was working for. I am privy to a lot of them. In all my meetings with him, I came out richer by a dozen of projects which are really marvelous and breathtaking. The second speaker that will follow Mr. Sethi is Beenu Arora. Needs very little introduction. Once again, co-founder and CEO of Cyble, an official member of Forbes Tech Council as well. Very young, but still very experienced. Over 15 years of cross-functional experience in technology, cybersecurity, risk consulting, and transformation programs across sectors. He's advised Fortune 50 and 100 organizations on engagements ranging from cybersecurity to program executions and operations. Right now, he's based out of Melbourne. Mr. Sethi is based out of Delhi. So we are actually in a very global environment right now. I will stop my sharing. It's over to you, Sethi sir. Please go on.
Thank you, Rahul. And you did say that you are based out of Gurgaon.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm based out of Gurgaon, and that makes even more global environment here, all across to you. Thank you, sir.
Good, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Beenu, how are you? Okay, so we have an interesting topic today, and I thought I'll just share my own thoughts, and then Beenu will share with you guys some more stuff on this topic. And let's go. Okay, so Rahul, just confirm to me if you can see my screen.
Absolutely, sir. You can go on.
Wonderful.
Screen visible, voice clear. Please go.
Thank you very much. So the checks are done. Now we can just start. So we'll discuss the topic perils of the dark web, protecting from the digital risk. And Rahul did give us some scary figures about dark web, deep web, and let's see what exactly this is. But before we start, let me welcome each one of you to this webinar. And I'm sure that this 1.5 hours that you'll spend with us, you'll really find it useful. It will be worth the time that you would spend over here. I also hope, wish, pray that each one of you, your families are safe, healthy. We know that Corona is maybe at its fag end or third wave will come. No one knows that part. But irrespective, we need to ensure that we always continue with all the precautions. So while we remain safe from Corona, I also wish and hope and pray that each one of us remains digitally safe. In today's world, that's equally important that each one of us should be digitally safe. And that is the topic that I'll be sharing with you guys today. How can we be digitally safe, especially in terms of whatever Rahul just showed us, what is happening on dark web, what is happening on deep web, what is there. So that's what we'll be sharing today. So we've seen some of these kind of news items, and I'll show you one or two of these. As we see over the last 6-7 months, ransomware attacks have been really dominating the entire world. There have been a lot of organizations, even within India, who have been attacked. Some of these information does come in public forums, some of them doesn't come in public forums, but I can tell you that there are a lot of companies which are getting attacked. And we also read this news recently, we said that a massive ransomware attack hit more than 1,000 odd companies. And then, of course, a couple of days back, we read about another organization, which is one of the global IT consulting organizations, which again was hit by a major attack. So we basically wanted to say that The attacks are very, very common. We should not feel that this is something which happens once in a while, but ransomware attacks or other attacks are happening on a very regular basis all across the globe, including India. Now, the question is, when we think of all these security incidents, and when I spoke about this, or Rahul spoke about this, or when you read on various newspapers or magazines or on your mobile, that that particular organization has been hit by ransomware, or there's a security attack, or there's some breach, or somebody's Facebook has been hacked, some other account has been hacked. So what does come to our mind? As I personally, whatever I have seen and spoken to a lot of people, two things or two feelings that come to most of the people. Number one, everyone really feels this way, which says, oh shit, it's so scary. Pata nahi mere saath kab dobara mere saath na ho jaye and all that. So that it gives a very scary feeling. But at the same time, it also gives another feeling in most of the people, and that feeling to my mind is more scarier than this, which is that though it is really bad, but somewhere in our hearts we feel it won't happen to me. Kisi aur ko, this will happen to somebody else, but this cannot happen to me. My organization cannot be attacked. My own personal accounts cannot be attacked. So while I do understand that 1,000 companies have been attacked, but I'm pretty sure and pretty confident that it will not happen to me. And to my mind, that's the scarier part of the entire feeling, because if we feel that it won't happen to me, I think that's a major issue with the individuals. So it's always good to be optimistic. It is always good to say that it won't happen to me, but the reality is optimism is good, but too much optimism may be bad. So we should not be overly optimistic. If we are taking all the precautions, then we can be slightly optimistic that, or realistic that it may or may not happen with me, but too much optimism is always bad. So we should not be really too optimistic that such things cannot happen to us. So let's talk about being digitally safe, what we need to do, how we should do. But before that, I wanted to just start with a couple of myths. Each one of us carries certain myths about a lot of stuff, and let me just share a few of them. The first myth is, which most of the people do carry, is this one. No one would want to hack us. We don't have anything worth taking. Our organization is a very small organization. Why should even I come into the hackers' radar? They don't even care about us. They'll only hack larger organizations where they'll get hundreds and thousands and millions of bitcoins. Why should anybody even want to think of attacking us? So don't worry. So we are safe. No one would want to hack us. As I see, that's just keeping our eyes closed. Just because we keep our eyes closed doesn't mean that nobody is going to attack us. Or just because we put our head in the sand, it doesn't mean that there's no danger around. I think that is one big issue that a lot of companies, a lot of people face. And the key thing is all organizations at all times need to be careful. It is not that whether you're a small organization, whether you're a large organization, whether you're a startup, whether you are billions and billions of dollar organization, everyone has to be careful at all times. That's myth number one. The second myth. Now, this is another myth that a lot of people, especially the IT people, the CIOs, CISOs, the infra security people, they do carry this myth. We have all possible technologies. I have put up SIM, I have done a SOC, I have done a firewall, I have done a UTM, I have done ABC, XYZ, AB, whatever. And how can anyone really attack us? I think that, to my mind, is a huge myth that just because you put in technologies, you cannot be attacked. So you may think that you have all the tools on the world, but remember one thing, the hackers could have even more tools than you. So it's not that only you have the tools and technologies. And there are a lot of times when you actually don't need tools, and we'll share some of those. Even to do many of these stuff, you really don't need major tools. So just because in your organization you have put in so many tools, it should not give you any false sense of security. So security is not just about tools and technologies. And also remember, hackers could have much more sophisticated tools. You are earning in rupees and dollars, they are earning in bitcoins. So they could also be actually having much more sophisticated tools. So just because you have put in some technologies should not make you feel safe. Also, these technologies keep on evolving, changing on a daily basis. I don't think most of the organizations can really catch up with the speed, the way the technology is changing. So don't be in that false illusion that I have so many technologies. So let's talk about the third myth. So I'm talking of 3 myths only at this time. So let's talk about the third myth. I think, again, this is a myth which comes from overconfidence in many people. I know everything. My team, our users, I know all aspects of information security. There's nothing that we don't know. We understand this. We have taken all precautions. We have done so much stuff. So no one can really attack us. To my mind, that's again an issue. We can't be just thinking that we are gods, we know everything, I know all. It's not there. Again, the way the attacker can come in could be so different that you would not have even imagined. None of your security awareness would have even taken care. Or if the fact that you feel your entire organization, everybody is really aware of everything, that gives you a false sense of complacency. And the moment you become complacent, then somebody can come and attack you. So don't be complacent. Information security as a field is changing so fast, so you cannot be complacent. So with that, let's see. So you need to remember at all times. What do you need to remember? So there's this favorite thing that, and they lived happily ever after. I don't know who lived, but somebody lived happily ever after. So in case of information security, I can only tell you that this doesn't work. So just because you are safe today, just because you have not been attacked as of now, doesn't mean that you'll always be safe. So don't be under this illusion that once I have done this, I'll live happily ever after. So what may have been safe yesterday may not be safe today. We all need to be vigilant at all times. And when we think of being vigilant, we also need to keep in mind what Rahul just spoke to us, what is happening in the dark web, what is happening in deep web. And over there, then as I personally see, when you really want to talk about what is happening in dark web, deep web, and having over the last many years spoken to so many IT people, IT heads, CIOs, lot of the people in the IT community and in the business community, let me talk about one more myth that exists in a lot of people, that dark web and deep web are safe. Many people actually don't know major difference between these two. And people think that it is just two terms which are being used interchangeably. So as I can share with you today that, and Rahul did allude to this, dark web is very different from deep web. So dark web is not same as deep web. Now, what exactly is this? Over the next couple of minutes, I'll share with you. I just wanted to start with basics as to what exactly is dark web, deep web, and then we get into how to save ourselves from dark web. So let's start with the basics. Very simple basics. Each one of us should be knowing this, but I wanted to start with that. I want to start with a simple concept. How do we really search on internet? Google पे लिख तो देते हैं www.google.com. But what exactly happens? How does www.google.com knows that if I have to search Cyble, how does it know that Cyble's server is in that country, that there's those guys have put in this kind of information, I find somebody something else? How do they know this? So what exactly is the technology behind searching on the web and internet? So there are two key concepts when we search, and most of us should be knowing this, but I just wanted to briefly share those. One is that there's a concept called crawling. Crawling would mean that there's a software program. So it's not really a physical spider that goes, but it's a spider kind of work. Because why it's spider kind? Because they say that it's a web. So that's where it's shown as a spider, but it's a program which actually goes around on all the servers and looks at each and every address and every website address over there, and then does something called indexing. Indexing would mean that it picks up the data, puts in some servers, and says that, okay, this kind of information about this, this is where I put in. So this is how the entire thing looks like. So there's a web crawler, or there's a software which does crawl various web pages, analyzes the content of the page. That's why when you write on Google, it gives you a few lines about that. Also, when you put in a search word, it looks at all, and that analysis of page content, it stores in the index. That's from where we pick. As a user, we do a query. So user queries, the various ranking algorithms will tell you as to what it is. We fetch the data. In case the data is not right upfront, fetch the data from the index, sends back the data back to the user. This is how the basic concept of internet search works. Now, if this be the search, now let's look at how does it impact what we are talking today. Now, it's like you going into an office and trying to find out and do a survey as to what thing is lying over there, what thing is lying over there. So you make a register and say that, okay, I have done a crawling where I've seen and analyzed what is lying over there. I have put in my register as to what is there, and that's so someone asked me, I can just look at register and tell him that you go to room 11 and you will find this. But what happens in case some area of the entire thing is restricted area where someone says no entry allowed? So the crawler comes, crawler wants to go and analyze the page. The web page says get lost. This area is restricted. No entry is allowed unless you are authorized. So what happens in that case? The crawler will not be able to send data for index. Crawler will not be able to analyze the content. So the site will not be indexed, and hence the site cannot be seen on search engine. That is why a lot of times we feel that whatever we see on Google and we search a particular word, say we have just searched Neeraj Chopra or Olympic gold medal or anything, we suddenly will find millions of search results. But the reality is there could be much more data from where we cannot even get that information back. So there's a lot of information which is not coming back. So that is where the the point comes as to what is dark web and deep web. So with that, what really happens is actually what we see as internet is not the real internet. What we see as internet is what we do on a Bing or a Google or Yahoo or whatever other thing that we might be using. But actual web or internet has various different parts. Conceptually, it can be seen as, you can call it a surface web, the deep web, and dark web. So the three. There are some people who talk about a fourth one also, which is a shadow web, but then there are enough things which say that shadow web actually doesn't exist. But these three, surface web, deep web, dark web, are the three major ones that most of the literature sees. So if I was to conceptually show the entire web as something, the picture that you see on the right of your screen. So what you see on the top is just a part of it, whereas the entire web could be much, much bigger. So surface web is that part of the web or the internet which can be accessed by any browser, Google, Bing. So most of the activities that we do on internet relate to the surface web. So surface web is, say, I'll put it somewhere over there. But when we go into the next, which is deep web, these are those sites which are not allowed to be crawled, and hence they are not indexed. But the difference which we need to remember is these are those sites which are accessible with a valid username, password, or any other authentication mechanism, which means that there's a part of internet where I have a website name. I cannot really enter into that site unless I have some means to authenticate myself. So that part is called deep web. And I'll share some examples of each of these as we move forward. And the third is, as you would have guessed, that there's another part, a very small layer of this entire thing, which is called deep web, which cannot be even accessed directly by our normal browsers, which cannot be even many times accessed even using a normal authentications. So it can be accessed only using very specific softwares, and I'll share one of those softwares with you today. And or it can be accessed using various configurations and authorization access. It is not regulated. And in this case, the IP addresses are hidden and is anonymous encrypted networks. This is what we call as dark web. So these are three webs: surface web, deep web, dark web. So if I look at this conceptually, we are something like this. If you see, surface web is a part of the entire thing. Some people may say it's 2%, 3%, 4%, around that number. Rahul put it at 40 times. Deep web is the largest part of it. And then there's a small part, which is the dark web. So just to give some examples, whatever we see on our Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, any other things, or Google searches, that all is surface web. On the deep web, all our emails, internet portals, banking accounts, social media accounts, where if you have to enter that, you have an IP address or you have a list, you have a URL, but to enter that, you need an authentication. That is what the deep web is. And dark web is all about private communication forums and illegal trade and stolen information, what again we just saw. So surface web is less than 5%, ranging from 2 to 4%, 4.5%. No one can actually find the actual quantum of this, but people's guess is that it's around that number. Then deep web is around 90 or 95% or more than that, and dark web is around a 1% or less than that. Now, if I have to access dark web, as I said earlier, it cannot be accessed by our normal browser like a Google or Explorer or any such search engine. So we use dedicated software which is called Tor, T-O-R. Tor stands for the onion router, and then there's a technical behind it as to why it is called the onion router. But primarily, it's an anonymizing software. In itself, it's not dark web. So if someone says that I have Tor, doesn't mean that you are on the dark web. It is just a way of accessing dark web. You can always go to Google, search about Tor, you can download Tor, you can do all those things. So it's just a browser. So now coming to dark web specifically, when most of the people think of dark web, they think of dark web will have all the phishing, ransomware, jo bhi mere paas aa rahi hai, everything is being done. We just heard that some passports or other numbers, everything is available over there. Maybe dark web has all kinds of drugs, bitcoins, ransomware. So that's what comes to our mind, that dark web is about all this. It is about blackmail, it is about extortion, all sorts of criminal activity. That's when we think of dark web. That's what comes to our mind. But that's again a myth. The myth is dark web is not only about illegal activity. There are some legal activities also which are happening on dark web, and I'll be sharing some of these. So people do carry, those who know a bit of dark web, they also carry a myth that anything which is illegal, dark web will be only illegal. No, there are things which are not illegal also on the dark web. So though one of the most transactioned item, what you sell over there is, or buy over there is data, personal data, all those things. It is also becoming increasingly popular with internet users who just want to safeguard their privacy online. So there are a lot of forums over there which are just very, very private, anonymous forums, which have nothing to do with any illegal activity or illegal trade, but people want their anonymity. So that's also there on the dark web. So now the question comes, dark web is fine, I have all my systems, why should I really care about this? Why are you telling me all these things? So for that, each one of us always need to remember one thing: ignorance is not bliss. Just because we do not know that we have been hacked doesn't mean that we'll never be hacked. Just because we think that we don't want to know about dark web, the dark web doesn't exist. Dark web does exist. So ignorance is not bliss, and we should always be very, very careful. That's why we need to be aware of what the dark web is. So then the last question comes. Okay, you have told me what is deep web, what is dark web, what could be the potential issues. What should I do? If I have to save myself, I have to ensure that my organization is safe. What should I do? So I'll just give you very simple 8 tips on how to protect yourself from the digital risks. First, you need to ensure that all your systems, processes, policies, technologies are upgraded at all times. There are a lot of times one would see that the patches on various systems, operating systems, databases, everything is quite old, and there are a huge amount of vulnerabilities in each one of them. The policies and processes are quite old. You would not have even told your users about many of those things. But just because that entire thing has brought you till here, it doesn't mean that it will take you forward. You are vulnerable at all times. So you need to ensure that you upgrade first your own skills, your team skills, and then of course, all the processes, policies, technology, everything you should. The second one, I think that's a major thing that a lot of people do is password reuse. Now we just heard that there are a lot of passwords which are available on the dark web. But if you change your passwords, that problem is gone. If you don't use the same password for your email account, your Hotmail account, your Gmail account, official account, and for your bank and for something else, if there are 7 different passwords for 7 different things, then remember that even if 1 or 2 of them are compromised or hacked, at least the other 5 are safe. But if you are using the same password for all with some minor variation, किसी का आगे @1 लगा दिया, किसी का 2 लगा दिया, then you are actually exposing yourself to a lot of issues. So do not use. So that's my second tip to you. Do not use the same password for official personal accounts or for multiple accounts. Change your passwords frequently. There are a lot of people who would not have changed their Hotmail or Gmail account for ages and ages, and even banks, of course, they force you to change. But in many other places where you are not forced to change, people continue with the same password for years and years. So you should change your password so that even if it gets compromised, you have already changed your password. And always use a complex password. Don't use very simple passwords or passwords with your names or your family names. So use, when I say complex passwords, having a combination of capital letters, small letters, special characters, numerals, what else? You can always do that and have a minimum size of 8 or 10 or 12 digits. And wherever possible, also use a 2-factor authentication in your offices for all the critical. So that's number 2. Third tip. Now, this is also very important from a CIO, CISO perspective. A lot of time, if there are small incidents, we tend to ignore them. Every incident, big or small, should be analyzed thoroughly, because some of these could give you a pointer that somebody is trying to hack you. So every incident should be analyzed. That's number 3. So let's look at the 4th one. Acting slow on security breaches is not an option. There are times, okay, ठीक है, आया था, चलो देखते हैं, बात करते हैं, let me talk to them, कल करेंगे, next week करते हैं, call लिखवा दी है मैंने vendor पे. So all those kind of things, so where we act really slow on security breaches, that becomes an issue. So if we need to ensure that our organizations are safe, we need to act really fast on the security breaches. Next, remember, the information security of the organization, while CIO, CISO are accountable, but it's everyone's responsibility. We need to ensure that everyone in the organization, all the stakeholders, everyone, including our vendors, customers, employees, service providers, everyone should be involved in that and ensure that we make the organizational information assets safe. So for that, you as the IT leaders in your organization, you need to really act as maybe change managers or whatever to ensure that you galvanize the strength of everyone and bring everyone around that, yes, we need to be safe at all times. So for that, you also need to focus on user awareness and user awareness on various areas. I just gave one example of phishing attacks. So a lot of times users are either not aware or there are times they are careless. And phishing could be either by email, it could be social engineering, it could be various ways where you can actually, someone can pick data from you guys. So that's where we need to ensure that we focus a lot on user awareness. Also, since, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this webinar, that between the CIOs, CISOs, and I know that so many WhatsApp groups also between this community. So we should have regular information sharing and ensure collaboration so that, because at the end of the day, even if somebody is getting hacked, he or she, number one, can be supported by others, and number two, can also share his or her experiences with others so that others remain safe. So we should have a huge amount of collaboration among people on this. And finally, also, while we do all this, we should also look at what exactly is happening on the dark web. Is there any discussion about your organization happening? Are hackers talking about you? Is there some data about you, your organization, personal data, whatever is already there? And then there are various ways and means where you can scan, and Beenu will be sharing one of the major ways as to how you can run regular scans and focus on something called cyber threat intelligence, which comes back to the original point I said, that you can't be just keeping your eyes shut. So we need to look at as to what is happening on the dark net or dark web and see that is everything okay from my organization perspective? So that's where we need to run regular scans. So finally, we should always remember one more thing. There's nothing called perfect security. You do everything. You need to be at all times fully vigilant, because you can never guarantee anything called perfect security. So you should always be ready for surprises. You should always be on your toes as far as security is concerned. So we need to remain vigilant at all times to protect ourselves from digital risks and from the perils of dark web. So with that, let me just end my thing. I wish each one of you stays safe. Thank you very much. Back to you, Rahul.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir. You know, and I always appreciate this habit of yours, that you don't make it too verbose, you don't make it too cluttered. You know, through pictures, you have made us all understood. I mean, it was quite a nice story coming from how the current scenario of attacks is, and you know, how do we generally react? You know, that it's scary, yeah, it's really bad, it won't happen to me. And then, you know, bursting the myths one by one, that, you know, the world may be hacked, but I'm safe because I'm a small tiny fish in the large pond. But that's not the truth. And that actually grows complacency in our minds. And the moment we are complacent, that's where the attackers are the happiest. And thank you for also demystifying the dark and the deep web, and also giving the 8 tips. I'm sure you know, all the delegates must have carefully heard you, listened to you, because I am getting a lot of questions. But I will now invite Beenu without further ado. Beenu, the screen is yours. Please share your presentation, and in the end we will take questions, because I'm getting a lot of questions from delegates here.
Thank you, Rahul, and thank you so much, Vijay sir. I think it was an amazing segue, and thank you. You know, I appreciate all the context you have established. My job is actually much easier now. So let me bring up my screen, and Rahul, if you can confirm you can view it, that'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are able to see that.
Awesome. So again, thanks everyone for dialing into this webinar today. The intent of my presentation is to give you some more information on, or sharing some more data points on, giving you some visibility on what's happening in the deep web and dark web, and why is it really necessary in the current you know, world we are living in, to keep an eye on those developments. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Cyble, and as a company, we are located across 6 countries now. And our objective, or why we are existing despite of all the red ocean market which we live in, it's all about empowering the organization to give them visibility on the deep web and dark web. We are one of those companies. We're also backed by Y Combinator, which is one of the prestigious accelerator based out of the US. And of course, a number of other you know, venture funds as well, including Schoolers. So I'm just going to go straight to the topic here. Obviously, there's a lot of buzz, a lot of media talks about the breaches, hacks, and all those different things which we get on the mobile notifications these days. And it may not surprise on what we saw recently, when one of the threat actors, basically just to build up his dark web market or cybercrime market, they leaked out more than 1 million credit cards for free for anybody who can visit their website. That was an interesting development, what we saw. It actually was probably the most generous leak which we have seen in the last few months, if not years. And the intent was pretty straightforward. They want to generate demand so that, you know, cyber criminals can come to their markets and can buy fresh credit cards or, you know, debit cards of people and so forth. And these are the activities which we, as a company who is focused on the dark web monitoring, we see that these trends are actually increasing quite rapidly. And none of the banks, or there's no single region or country which is immune to it. Often the hackers are stealing these different cards from a variety of sources, including from point of sale all the way from the, you know, e-commerce websites and so forth. In India alone, if you look at more than 5 million financial transactions or documents have been leaked in the last 1 year. And that's to our knowledge. It could be more than that. And we see that this trend is not slowing down. As always, I've said it multiple times in the past, what you see in the news, there's actually a very different story which is currently happening in the dark web. We will talk more about the dark web and what it constitutes, how we can protect ourselves and so forth as we progress, but just want to give you a flavor of it. One of the other things which is quite prominent, something which we all have experienced while reading the news, the ransomware attacks are happening. A company had a ransomware attack, the data got stolen, the systems were encrypted, and they can't reuse it. We saw that in the CISO attack, when not just one entity which was compromised, it was a supply chain attack, when they also broke into a number of MSSPs, a number of other organizations through one entity which they originally compromised. We see some of the advanced attacks which are coming through new ransomware groups or existing ransomware groups who are changing their names or colluding with each other and hacking into some of the largest enterprises now, like Fortune 500 companies. The agenda or the propaganda of these ransomware groups are quite straightforward. They basically want to break into a company, steal their data, and then ask for a ransom or extortion. I'll talk about one specific example here, which is something we also dissected, or we did a lot of research on that part, was the Conti ransomware. It's one of the ransomwares which is quite relevant for Indian ecosystem as well. Like any ransomware out in the market, the group has a pretty straightforward, the way they organize themselves is they have their own core team, which is a bunch of people, which some of the organizations, including Cyble, suspect, operating from Eastern European region. And then those people are responsible for managing, the malware or the malicious files, and they are the ones who should maintain all the website. Now, these people generally don't actually go and hack into the companies themselves in most of the cases. What they then do is they hire cyber criminals, or in some sense, penetration testers, which are looking for a job or who are looking to make some extra bucks. They hire those people from the different cybercrime marketplaces, and they are called affiliates, the people who actually are hacking into the companies. That gives them two purposes. A, they're not directly hacking into the organizations themselves, which means there's a bit of a distance they're keeping, between the actual victim and themselves. But they're also scaling their operations by hiring multiple pen testers and all this stuff. It may not surprise you, but in the last 365 days or a year, more than 3,000 companies have been breached by ransomware attacks. What we know of, the actual scale of these ransomware attacks can go even maybe 3x or 4x of it. There are several ransomware groups, including Revel, whose interview is also published on a blog, which is blog.cyble.com. You will see that ransomware group last year alone made $100 million just based on successful extortion. So all of their hacks are not even published on their websites, and they've made 100 million from that alone. Coming back on Conti, so obviously you have a core team, which is Magic Infra, and then you have the affiliates network. One of the things which happened recently was one of the pen testers of this group was not happy. Maybe he didn't got paid what he was promised. That actor leaked all the documents, all the manuals of this particular group. It may not surprise you, but this group or many other groups who Cyble is also tracking, and there are more than 80 ransomware groups now in the market, they're highly sophisticated and highly organized. They've got detailed instructions for pen testers on how you can hack into different companies, what are the different scripts you need to run to be able to elevate their privileges and so forth. The screenshot on the right is just one of the snippets from their documentation on what password combinations the pen testers can try when they're hacking into the company or when they're trying to escalate their privileges. This is an example, which is exactly quite linked to what Vijay sir also mentioned, that people often try to use the default passwords or use maybe they add an asterisk in the end or exclamation on the end and try to create those combinations. Something we should not never do it. You can see that these people have already published manuals for other hackers that you should go and try these combinations. So one of the key takeaways from this part is alone, please do not use any default passwords, where possible. And then implement multi-factor
Sorry to interrupt, Beenu. Can you put it in the presentation mode? Some people are demanding that. If you can put it on full screen, if possible. Sorry.
Yeah, just 1 second, no problem. Is that visible?
It's just coming up, I guess. Yeah, I think it is. I hope the attendees are now able to see this.
Got it. Just let me know in case screen is not visible for whatever reason. But coming back here, I mean, this is just another example on the cyber criminals are becoming highly sophisticated. They are using the weaknesses within the organization's infrastructure. So go on, Rahul.
Beenu, sorry, this is Pranav. This is even smaller. I think what you did was you just undo that and share it normally, and then press the presentation.
Got it. Let me try again. And my sincere apologies. I think something is going funny here.
No worries.
How is it now? Is it better? Any better than the last one?
It hasn't come up.
We're just waiting for it to come. Yeah.
Yeah. Now just go to the full screen mode at the bottom. Yeah.
How about now?
Oh
no.
It's smaller somehow.
I think let it be, Beenu. Let it be in the old. Yeah. I think continue with that because that'll actually creating problem.
Correct.
No problem. I'll try to be as explicit as possible, so you don't have to refer to the slide again, and you can always refer that after this webinar anyway. So I mean, as I was explaining to everyone earlier, the ransomware operators or the cyber criminals, they are using the stock standard pen testing techniques to be able to hack into the companies and elevate the privileges. So it's really important then when you are building or maintaining any of the infrastructure, you get that thoroughly tested, because often the hackers are going to use similar techniques on how they break into your companies from the outside. And talking about breaking into the companies, as I explained, in the last 6 months, there are more than 1,200 companies which have been compromised, hacked by these ransomware group operators. And no region is immune, including India for that matter. Everybody's, is facing, almost every developed or developing nation is facing the increasing ransomware attacks, including India for the matter. And we see in India, a lot of cyber criminal groups, including Marketo, Conti, Club, are very, very active. And most of the industries which are being targeted, again, to the public domain, and public also includes the dark web domain, includes chemicals, hospitality, food and beverage, government, and healthcare. So these are some of the sectors which we see quite often where the cyber criminals are actively trying to penetrate, or they find penetrating these companies relatively easier than the other sectors. So that's some of the insights which we also learned as a company. And talking about that, it's not just about financially motivated. I mean, even cyber criminals are really after anything which, since the COVID-19 pandemic has hit, they are actively trying to break into some of the most mature organizations, even in the healthcare sector, and trying to steal their intellectual property, documents or designs, or their information. The motives are varying from our perspective, all the way from typical script kiddie who's just doing things for fun or trying to make some extra bucks with ransomware groups, to organized criminals, right? We're talking about real ransomware guys, the core team, whose job is just to make the money. to activists who are hacking into the companies for some belief they have. And that's just one example. Hackers are trying to hack into healthcare companies and trying to expose some of their, their information, or trying to prove a particular point, to all the way geopolitical threats, which is with what we see also is quite increasing at the same time. When it comes to geopolitical threats, the type of information out there is even scarier than what we originally thought. We're talking about the CAD designs where the government or the threat actors who are actually being sponsored by state actors trying to hack into companies and trying to steal their national secrets. And these are some of the very basic examples of what I'm trying to share here. And we see the threats across the entire spectrum, all the way to script kiddies trying to make extra bucks, to all the way people who are trying to leverage another nation's security infrastructure, IP, to benefit themselves by stealing them, by copying it, or even trying to see what weaknesses are there. So type of the threats and the motivations, what we see in the dark web is actually quite varying from what we are observing from the outside. Talking about what we do, because that's something people might be interested to know. We don't sell icebergs or ice creams. Cyble as an organization, when we started back in June 2019, we had a very, it was a project. It was never a company to start with. We were a project when we and Manish were the co-founders. We thought about building a technology which can go in dark web, collect information, analyze it, process it, and then alert the customers on the closest to real-time basis. And that's how the company foundations were laid. But what was surprising for us as well, the issues which we are able to uncover, that all resonated a lot with the industry. And then over time, we expanded our visibility from the dark web to deep web, and now we even monitor surface web for the companies. And we offer is a digital risk protection solution or dark web monitoring solution. I don't know which bucket to put it. What we really shine out as an organization is all about the dark web monitoring, but we do have significant visibility on the surface web side of things as well, which I'm more than happy to expand if somebody wants to learn more about it. Though we are almost or a little over 2 years old company now, but the team who we have pulled together, they're very experienced folks coming from all different facets. We are 62 people spread across 6 countries. And as you would see, Vijay Sethi is one of our advisors in the company. But then we have got some highly capable team of individuals coming from all different expertise, all the way from enterprise, SOC development, to people who have been part of some of the Fortune 500 companies, all the way from people who have built and executed large-scale cyber intelligence programs. So it's a very global team which we have assembled as a company. And the intent is how we can provide a solution or products to our customers in order for them to be able to effectively detect those threats early. And what we believe is early detection means early intervention. And that's what we aspire to be and where we are positioning the company itself. And with that said, I'm going to end my presentation here on. I also welcome you to come out and check our blog, which is blog.cyble.com, where you can see some of our free or publicly or unclassified research there for reading purposes. With that said, I'll pass the control back to Rahul.
Thank you, Beenu. Yes, Cyble certainly doesn't sell icebergs and ice creams, and thank God it doesn't, because it does something more valuable than that. It's a tremendous progress that the company has made and reputation that it has earned over all these years that it has been established. You've excellently built over where Sethi sir left. And I have a barrage of questions that I would now like to take. Now, the dilemma here is that whom shall I'm going to put up this question to both of you any which ways. Please let me know who's going to take the who's going to take the opportunity to answer these questions. So the first question comes from my friend Mayank Bedi. He wants to know, is dark web being controlled by any government or regulatory agency? And if no, then should it be?
Answer is simple.
I can go first on this one with your permission, Vijay sir. I'm not sure if people understand the history of it. I mean, the dark web is just like a new metaphor we created. Originally, it was a network created by the intelligence agencies, such as CIA, in this case, who wanted people to communicate to each other anonymously. And they also wanted some level of integrity in the communication at the same time. Typical CIA concepts, but with privacy in mind. Over time, that project or that concept was adopted by a lot of open source books. And we all, I think a lot of people who are in security, people do appreciate open source stuff. And that's how it actually become a very popular project, the Tor project, for an example, or I2P. And there are many versions of it. And I think Vijay sir also explained in his presentation, dark web is not bad at all for everything. It's not like 100% bad. And if you refer to multiple studies, even by different universities, you will find that around 50 to 70% of the content in dark web is generally not bad. People are using it for legitimate purposes, but they are conscious about their privacy. They don't want to leave their digital footprint out there. But then the 30% or 40% what is left is largely being abused by the cyber criminals. Now, the moment you will want to put regulation on top of that, which means Uncle Sam or some big brother onto it, there's a fair chance they might end up creating something new where people will migrate to. So what the fundamentals of this entire private network, or what we also term as a dark web, it's all about, it's taken with privacy and anonymity in mind. Putting regulations will just going to divert a big traffic to somewhere else. With that said, I'll pass it to Vijay sir in case he wants to add something more.
I think you explained it very well. And second thing I can only add is that from regulation or government perspective, yes, there are some agencies who do monitor what is happening over there for their own country's security or otherwise. They do monitor. That's the only thing I'll add to what Beenu said.
All right, let me move on to, as Beenu, you very rightly said that it was actually started by research organizations in the US Department of Defense. So to anonymize and encrypt networks, and then it was taken over from there for different other reasons. And it's certainly not all the dark web is bad, most certainly. So Abhishek Bakshi wants to know, is password manager recommended? Is it safe? I mean, he's actually referring to Vijay Sethi sir's presentation where he was talking about password reuse and stuff like that. So that the question is originating from there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the short answer is absolutely yes. Make sure you use a reputable one. There are quite a few options in the marketplace. We know at least one of the top 5 password manager who have been compromised recently, including their master keys have been compromised. So it's not bulletproof, but I also said there's not much alternatives left anyway. So there are some really good tools out there. Use them. It's still better than having nothing at the moment.
Correct. Otherwise, what people would do is they'll either write their password on some place or use similar sounding passwords everywhere. So password manager is good, but use it carefully.
And don't use Excel sheets to store your passwords, please.
Absolutely.
Absolutely not. But people have done it, including big corporates, which is embarrassing.
So another question, as I said, gentlemen, please be ready. There's a barrage of questions. So if we found email ID or name in dark web, is it possible to clear if we changed passwords?
I think there is a general term which we use. Anything once it goes on the internet, it stays there forever.
Correct.
Now, in the dark web context, it's actually even much harder to remove it because you don't even know where exactly it is sitting in. There have been very few instances where third parties who are running their operations on a Tor network accidentally reveal the infrastructure, which means, yes, you can pinpoint and basically get a geo locations of those people. But in most of the cases, it's almost impossible. And I think we just want to add something there.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that goes into web, it's like our normal internet. If you put something on Google, how do you delete that? So just think that it's an extension of that. And the other part is you don't even know where those servers are and who owns those servers. It's all anonymous. So it becomes even more difficult. Only thing that you can do is once you find that your email is compromised or password is compromised, just change the password. And if possible, change the email ID also.
Okay, I will move on to the next question. It is slightly, the question is slightly drifting away from the topic, but it is still important for us to know from both of you. The question comes from Deepak Gurunath, wants to know how do you ensure data security for customers working from remote location through cloud without any extra maintenance or service cost to IT team? So here's the question on optimization, zero budget, but can you give us?
You know, I can start with this and then you can add to it. So to my mind, honestly, it doesn't make any difference whether your customer is working from within your office, whether working over cloud or from his or her office. The principles of information security remain exactly the same. And the reality is 90% or 80% of the security doesn't need any money. It's only the technology piece which needs money, which in any case you would have put in for your own house. Because you're trying to safeguard your own data. You're not safeguarding something else. So irrespective whether it was your customer accessing or someone else accessing, you would have safeguarded your own stuff. But in most of the cases, if you really look at, most of these breaches are at the weakest link, and weakest link is most of the time may not be technology. It might be human beings. It might be your policies. It might be your processes. It might be your monitoring mechanism, which to my mind doesn't cost that much. So that would be my response.
Beenu.
Yeah, I think it all depends upon what is your baseline. If you already have a very decent, cyber posture, and your organization has done enough to, what we call as identify, protect, detect, respond, and then remediate. If that framework actually works well when people are working from the office, and you have qualitative or tangible data points to prove that people are well educated, there's a good security awareness, they are stopping the threats whenever it comes to your door, then I don't think you need to spend anything extra. But actuality, if you look at, if I have to take a scale from 0 to 5, where the 5 is a CMM5, like most mature cybersecurity posture, versus 0, which doesn't exist. Majority of the organization in today's world are somewhere between 2 and 3. So, and when people are working remotely, it becomes even more challenging, because often when you're in the office and you get an email which you're not sure why are somebody asking me to transfer $20 million or 2,000 rupees to somebody else, you can just go back and ask your colleague, hey, is this actually looks okay to you? But at home, they don't have that little privilege. Everybody is so much into their own work, and that actually can further increase your exposure. So my response is it's all about what is your current baseline, and that actually will justify whether the additional spends are necessary or not.
Okay, the next question is a little wacky, and I have already answered in a very wackier way. The question is, are there any job openings in Darkweb? I said, please let me know if there are any. so
Yep.
Okay, we'll take this question.
Depends on what kind of job are you looking for.
So Vishal Giri, I mean, that's more of a compliment to the session, and he has confessed that he faced ransomware attack twice in his career, and he knows what situation would be after attack. They encrypted my server data, but I have successfully restored servers from backup data. It was very nice and informative session for me. So it's a complimentary note that Vishal has sent.
Thank you, Vishal.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Vishal, and thanks for sharing and being very candid with us. Murugan Kuppuswamy wants to know how to find crawler is running on the devices of the enterprise.
So, first of all, crawlers are not a bad thing to start with. That technology fundamentally was designed so that people can search you on the internet. And a lot of companies, and we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of crawlers which are active on the internet, including Cyble, when we crawl the entire internet at least once a day. The intent or the purpose varies. You have good crawlers like Google or even Cyble for that matter, who are trying to see what information is you want to share with the search engine, or Cyble, which is trying to find how your attack surface looks like. But then there are obviously, nefarious or cyber criminal gangs, which are trying to find misconfigurations, information leakages, and so forth. What is important to note is when these crawlers are coming and trying to probe your website, if they are just probing for or following the links on your website, it doesn't necessarily harm too much. Where things become interesting is when they are trying to find some interesting files, by searching for configuration files and so forth. Those type of probing, and I'm not saying crawling here, those are type of probing, which majority of the VAPs, if you have a web application firewalls, or even a CDN, like a Cloudflare, or could be Akamai, those technologies have matured a lot in the last few years, where they can block more than 90%, if not 99%, of such attempts. So, again, taking a summary, not all crawlers are bad, and the ones which are bad, there are technologies which are readily available and which can prevent those attempts at a very high accuracy rates. I will let Vijay sir also respond to it.
Yeah, sure. And thanks, Beenu. I think what you said is right. Also, I'll just add to that maybe there are times when crawlers actually help the organization, even from SEO perspective, even to sometimes what he spoke about from a cyber crawler perspective, these also help you making your entire ecosystem safer also. So crawlers are not bad. The second is while WAF and others can really limit 90-95%, but even if those 5% which go in, you can always look at your web server logs and you'll find that as to who is trying to crawl and what they are trying to do. But otherwise, Beenu explained it well.
Okay. There is a question by our gentleman, Syed Tasneem. He is actually a user. He has recently bought Cyble services, and he needs an insight in terms of usage and how this will benefit his organization in terms of cybersecurity posture. I will personally forward this question to Cyble team. There are some apprehensions that he has along with some details. So it's not appropriate for me to entirely read out that question here. But Beenu, rest assured, I will send this question in a mail.
Sure.
Thank you for your patience. This was a little out of turn. Let me go back to the list of questions. So Kayomers Gandhi wants to know, do companies also deploy ethical hackers to identify any of their data? To identify if any of their data is being sold on dark web. If yes, is there also a chance of backfiring? As we know, internal frauds are more in number in comparison to the external frauds.
I can give it a shot with your permission, sir. Ethical hackers are not necessarily the skill set, which is necessary when it comes to engaging with the dark web. In our humble opinion, people who have got a decent background when it comes to negotiations, or people who are really good in human intelligence with high EQ generally have got a higher success rate compared to people who like to code and like to break into the companies through ethical hacking. So the skill set actually is very different. First of all, the second part to your question is when an organization wants to deploy their internal resources for hunting the stuff in the dark web, it can definitely backfire in a lot of different ways. One of the key reasons why a lot of organizations haven't built the capability on monitoring the dark web themselves is because of this uncharted territory. We are not just talking about typical breaches. There is also a lot of explicit content, including drug trafficking, human trafficking, all different stuff. And when organizations are allowing any of their employees to go in there, they will come across a lot of explicit content, which can create uneasiness and also potential regulatory or compliance issues. So I think the short answer is you can do as long as the jurisdictions where you're operating is supporting that. But in most of the mature or developed countries, getting in dark web through your corporates can actually pose significantly more risk than just backfiring of whether something goes wrong. It's going to be more than that. So it's need to be assessed on case-by-case basis. I'll let Vijay respond to it as well.
Yeah, so as I was saying, answer is yes, but that's primarily for surface web. So a lot of companies do use ethical hackers more for surface web, not for dark web primarily. Over there, there are specialized tools, and in any case, 1 or 2 or 3 people cannot really do the entire thing, because all the organizations, whether it is Cyble or others who are into that space, they would have expensive kind of people who have that knowledge, skill sets, which need to be upgraded on a very regular basis, which a person who is an ethical hacker just at the surface web may not be requiring that deep knowledge. So they're two different things. Surface web, yes. Deep web, dark web, no.
Okay, can I go to the next question?
Yes, sir.
Right. So, another observation comment by Lalit Wazirani wants to know how come BFSI isn't in the top sectors targeted by this. So, is there any definite answer to that?
We'll ask you to answer.
Okay. So that calls for a research. I will get back to you, Lalit.
At the end of the day, BFSI basically means finance, so that's why it automatically becomes the first target as a financial, because you'll have data related to so many customers. So that's why BFSI logically becomes the first port of call from that perspective. Beenu, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think it goes without saying that while BFSI is a very attractive target for any cyber criminal, whichever spectrum you look at, but the cyber criminals also understand that the probability of finding the low-hanging fruits or being able to easily break in, the odds are very low for them. I'll give you a very basic example. One of the top 5 largest banks in the US, they spend more than $500 million in 3-year term to secure the infrastructure. So it's all about, when you look at the financially motivated threat actors, they look at the ROI. If I have to break into a bank from the outside, the amount of resources they have to spend, and it's going to be significantly higher compared to breaking into a chemical factory, who is still going to pay them anyway because of the regulatory or compliance reasons, like even GDPR for that matter. So it's attackers are opportunistic, but for sure in the BFSI space, the threats are actually more, it's more concerning for the actual consumers, who are actually the direct victims of most of the financial frauds. So it really depends on the region itself and also on the maturity of those financial institutions.
Okay. Okay, Sadevan Vijayan wants to know, it has been noticed that organizations who have cyber insurance are majorly targeted by the ransomware groups and ransomware attackers. The attackers find such targets as better yields. Is there any way to tackle this kind of issue?
It's a topic which is very close to my heart, and I think Sadevan has made a very interesting observation there, and I fully agree with it. What we have seen is, and there are some real life examples as well, where a ransomware group broke into an insurance company. They took out the list of people who actually have bought cyber insurance policies from them, and then started attacking them, but left that company alone for some time. So they started targeting those companies, and those companies eventually were paying them through insurance companies. And then at some point, the insurance company decided, we're not going to pay any more ransoms because there's too much of claim coming in. And then those same cyber criminal group hacked, basically, broke into that the insurance company again, and did all the mischief. Now, this is an interesting problem, because not having an insurance, you're going to be living with a potential exposure. If something goes wrong, who's going to pay for it? If you decide to pay, by the way. And if you take the insurance, then you obviously become an attractive target, because they also know that you won't wait for a single minute. You just call the insurance party and say, hey, please take care of it. I think the choice is largely dependent on your own resiliency. If your BCP DR processes are robust and you're able to recover the systems, your RTO, your RPOs are aligned to your business objectives, I don't think you need an insurance, because you can recover. But it again depends on where you are today. What is your current posture looks like? Some people do not have confidence. I think a lot of security people, sometimes they just feel, I don't even know what's out there in my network. So it's all about de-risking it, and that drives the decision making here. I'll pass it to Vijay Sethi, because I'm sure he would have some insights there as well.
Thank you. I'll just give you two more perspective to this entire thing. One, there are a lot of times when companies do take cyber insurance, they become slightly complacent. So they become easier to attack, because they know in any case, if there's an attack, somebody else is going to pay for it. So that's why they become slightly easier targets. Number two, I think what companies don't realize is whether they are paying directly to an attacker or they are paying via the insurance company. At the end, it's their money which is going. So may not be the same money going in year one. They are paying to the insurance company as an EMI for next 5 years as an insurance premium. So I think what companies need to do is, irrespective of whether you take insurance or not, you need to go back and ensure that your systems are safe. Your DRBCP, as Beenu said, has to be there. And you should tend to see that whether insurance or no insurance, I cannot be hacked. I have to ensure that kind of thing. That's what I have to reach to. And insurance cannot be just taken as an alibi to be complacent.
True. No, absolutely right. I mean, profound answers by both of you. I hope there's a better clarity now. So let me quickly take two questions by Sumit Kokhani. So do you or your organization require to collaborate with threat actors operating from Darkweb? Is the first part of the question. The second is how the claim of takedown services by the Darkweb service providers are effective to support in the interest of any organization.
I think the first part is, I think collaboration is a very, very kind of a positive phrase. And I mean, I don't like to collaborate with criminals to start with. I think that's just unethical, in my opinion. What the right term is the counterintelligence operations or adversarial engagement operations. You would have heard about people getting tricked in social engineering, but then you can also use the same right tool to collect targeted intelligence. So to your point, we do not collaborate or collude or partner. We do conduct counter or adversarial engagement to collect specific intel, which is of interest to our customers or to our community at large. So they're very different. I think that's a very, pretty clear line or delineation how we do it. The second part, and Rahul, can you repeat the second question again?
Yeah, just a minute. So the second part of the question was how the claim of takedown services by the dark web service providers are effective to support in the interest of any organization.
Yeah, so the takedowns of the dark web is not that straightforward. Cyble would never commit an SLA in the dark web for taking down the stuff. It's just because it's really hard to attribute who is actually hosting it. I can also even challenge some of the claims on the surface web for the matter, where if you go out and try to tell the ISP or the actual hosting company, please check this down, and you go up with a DMC and notice or a legal notice, they'll just gonna wipe their face with it and throw it in the bin. So there is no guarantee in the surface web even, let alone the dark web. And whatever claims which you are being, offered or shared, verify it. And I think the worst verification is, how can somebody pinpoint exactly where the infrastructure of an entity in the dark web is located? Because if you can't locate it, how are you going to take it down to start with? And then one more thing before I hand it back to Rahul. A lot of the things in the dark web, they do change a lot. So they're not necessarily hosting the data at the same URL or the Tor URL for the matter. They change a lot. People often renew the relays because they want to keep themselves moving. So that is not a takedown either. It's just that they have changed the URL from one place to other place. So all of these stuff needs to be properly validated before believing on that.
Vijay sir, you want to add something, or shall I move on to the next question?
Go ahead.
Okay. There is a question which wants to know, the person wants to know, what is the capability of Cyble in identifying money laundering, as generally it is being investigated by government investigation agencies who have access to financial institutions across the globe and their transaction record as well.
Yeah, so excellent question there. I think what's really important to know is at this stage, Cyble collaborate with some of the law enforcement agencies to basically understand what threat are we observing. And often there are some really high fidelity threats information which we pass it to them willingly, because it's important for a larger community, not just for one specific government for that matter. When it comes to money laundering use cases, it's important to note at this stage, we do not collect financial transactions from any of the customers. We completely work from the outside. Now, there's one element to it, which is when we are coming across different breaches, leaks, or people just throwing data over there, we don't necessarily analyze each and every document in terms of understanding where the money is coming from and where is it going to. We don't offer that standalone use case as of today. However, if a law enforcement agency wants to get access to it, which we already have crawled or spidered, then we generally do support them in case that could help from a national security perspective. We do help there as well.
Great. So I will now take, we are 24 minutes overboard, but I'm happy to go 6 more minutes overboard. I will take 2 more questions, which are right now being sent to me. is Cyble similar to a BitSite or security scorecard or like Cisco IRR and FireEye services? I mean, this is a comparison that Netra is wanting you to make, Beenu.
Yeah, it's an interesting list of the companies you have mentioned there. I, I mean, I think it's in the context of third-party scoring as a use case. The answer is, I mean, does Cyble offer security scoring of third parties? The answer is yes. And how we are similar or different to other providers, I think it's all depends on the quality of the data points which you are currently holding. Some organizations, and at least I love one of the companies you have highlighted here, I won't name it, but they have done a pretty good job when it comes to surface web monitoring, but not so much in the dark web and the deep web. So from our perspective, we do offer a use case or a solution for customers. And the way we differentiate ourselves is the breadth as well as the efficacy of data points we are collecting all the way from surface to deep web and dark web. And if somebody wants to understand a little bit more about it, you're more than welcome to reach out to one of us and we can demonstrate that to you as well.
Okay, so my friend Mrinal Chakravarti, who is the CIO of DTDC, the logistics company, wants to know, we have a large channel partners spread across the country. It's virtually impossible for us to govern each of those stations, but they have our address book, master data, etc., stored locally. Any suggestions how can we protect any attack on that surface, on that data or breach of data? Any thumb rule or for the core?
So do you want to take this one?
Sure, Vin. So number one, what we need to do is focus on huge amount of user awareness at that. So all these channel partners of yours need to be made aware. Aware of what? Number one, of course, that the data is important, but more importantly, what could be the base things that they need to do at their end? Whether it is their OS is really hardened, whether the antivirus is there, with all that basic information and basic steps that each one of them has to do. Second, if Mrinal, what you can do, if possible, depending on what kind of software you are running, if you can, while these guys have your master data, if you can keep it in an encrypted form at their end, it will be better for you guys. So those will be two suggestions: user awareness and encryption, and of course the basics on password changing and all those are always there.
Yeah, I think it's Beenu, it's a very important and a crucial point, and especially in the wake of these supply chain attacks, and the lower tier partners do not have access to great technology. I mean, anything counterfeit can go there, anything rogue can happen there. Software with malware can go there. So what do you recommend?
I think the first and foremost is when you are working with any third-party provider or any partner for the matter, start with a simple question: what information am I sharing with them?
Bindu, can you please check your mic? It is actually a little jitter out there.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Yeah, so I think the first and foremost question is going to be, what type of information am I sharing with these third parties or partners? And how important or sensitive is it for me as a company? If that information gets disclosed for whatever reason, breach or accidental, whichever way it is. I think that assessment on the impact if something goes wrong is very critical from the very first day. The second part of the story is whoever I'm handing over this data, assuming it's important, what is their security framework? I mean, are there any independent reports these guys can share which exhibit that they've got sufficient controls in place, which can, slow down or prevent or stop up, potential cyber attack? So those are the things which you should ask with the partner who you're sharing information with. And then third, which is not the least, there's a very common saying: you cannot predict Or D, you cannot, testify the efficacy of a knife without you actually go in the kitchen and test it yourself. If you have an incident response process, and we recommend all the organizations should have it, no matter what the size is. Even Cyble, as a literally young startup, we also have an incident response processes. If you have a process, please test it. See what, if you can actually gain additional learnings out of it. You can create a scenario where a third party has breached into a computer which has got our address book. What is the next step we need to do from there? So those are the tabletop exercises or mock exercises which you can do internally with your team and with third-party partners or suppliers. That can actually potentially, bring some really interesting insights on when things go really wrong. So that's my recommendation. Start with that. Do a mock exercise, and you will get a lot of learnings if something like this has to happen in real life.
All right. I think, are you exhausted, or you have an appetite for taking some more questions?
But
No, I'm just kidding. I think I had a few more, but I can actually keep them for an offline thing. So, I mean, I had a question, but I will just keep it for some other time. But thank you so much. I think in a very long time, I haven't done a webinar of this length, which was very spontaneous, which consumed a great deal of time in answering the questions from the delegates, from the attendees. I think questions were very intelligent. Beenu, I have already posted you and Mandar the mail from one of the recent customers that you have acquired. I hope you will address their concerns. So Vijay sir and Beenu, thank you so much for such a nice outing. Out of all that I've been doing, this was quite special, and I really liked the way it was conducted by both of you. So thank you so much, and thanks to all our delegates, thanks to all the people who asked questions, and all my team members who had actually put an effort to bring in as many as 225 people on this webinar. So thank you so much, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having us, Rahul. And thank you, Vijay sir. It was a pleasure.
thank you, everyone. Thanks, Beenu.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Signing off now.
Bye.